Here at the Destiny Exposure Summit, we're helping speakers to share their story, to to um, to touch their tribe, and also to expand their territory. And so we have someone else who's coming to the stage today. Her name is Dr. LaToya Gaines, and she is a licensed psychologist. She's an educator. She is a speaker. She's an advocate, and she is a leader in the mental health field. She states her greatest professional goal is to empower Black women to shed the weight of being a strong Black woman, okay, or being a strong Black woman. And so I want all the strong Black women to raise your hands. I want all the strong Black women to stand up. I want all the strong Black women to say, hey, it's me. If you're a strong Black woman and you are in the chat, I want you to put strong. Put hashtag strong in the chat. And so Dr. LaToya Gaines, let's go. And Dr. LaToya Gaines, welcome to the Destiny Exposure Summit.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here today.
I am excited as well, and I know I gave you the introduction, but I wanted you to have an opportunity to kind of just share with the viewers just kind of who you are, maybe what are your credentials, and that type of things.
All right. So, my name is Dr. LaToya Gaines. I have a doctorate degree in clinical psychology. I am a licensed psychologist, and I own a private practice called Family Matters Counseling and Psychological Services located in Michigan.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know because we've had some kind of background conversations, and I want just to throw out something to you. When we talk about a strong woman, what does that mean to you?
Ooh, what does that mean to me? Um, I think for me, it's about um, being able to embrace vulnerability and strength and resilience. And I think so often it's seen in so many different ways, right? But for me, that's what it looks like. Embracing that vulnerable side, being able to demonstrate resilience, um, but also be have balance between being vulnerable and being strong.
Okay. So you mentioned being vulnerable or having that balance between vulnerable and strong. Can you share with us from your story, from your perspective, why this concept is a big thing for you?
Big deal for me, because for so long, watching the women in my family show up, um, and do all the things, and watching how they never had time for themselves. And as much as they were giving to others around them, they really didn't have the support that they needed. And so I definitely embraced that for myself and was moving through my life in that way. And had times in my life where that just wasn't going to work. And I needed to be vulnerable. I needed to be able to have support and to receive that from those around me.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things I like to do at the summit is I like to go a little deeper into that deep dive. And so I know you talked about some things that may have happened some lessons that you may have learned, some experiences. Can you um, can you be a little, I guess, more vulnerable
Yes.
and share more detail so that the viewers can get a snapshot as to where you've been, and then we can talk about where you are now.
Absolutely. So in 2012, I was in my last year of my doctorate program. I was in internship, completing a dissertation, and taking coursework. So that by itself was a lot. At the time I was married, I had two little ones, and suddenly my mother had a stroke. At that time, my mother had already survived breast cancer. And so this was her second really serious health issue. And so I received the call, showed up, and from that moment on was juggling all of these things, making decisions about my mother's care, her health, her recovery, also trying to take care of my family, doing my classwork, and it was a lot. And the people around me really had no clue how difficult this was. Just the change in my mother's health, the added responsibility of making decisions for her care and being involved in her daily care. It was a lot. And I just think people on the outside were looking at me, and there was this attitude that I had it all together. And I was constantly getting feedback about that. You got this, and oh girl, you so strong, and just keep going, just push through. And eventually that just didn't work. And so I remember sharing what I was going through with a close friend, and she said, "Oh my God, we had no idea." And I said, "How could you have any idea? I haven't felt comfortable to talk about it." And I think part of that, the discomfort in talking about it, was how other people might see me if I couldn't handle it. And it got to a point where I was less worried about that, and just I needed help. I needed to be able to talk about it, and I needed help. And just sharing that with my girlfriend opened up this floodgate of my sister circle coming to my aid, showing
Mm-hmm.
up, whether it was to help with childcare, to visit with my mother, to cook, um, or to just wrap their arms around me and, commiserate in how sad this was and how hard it was. So that was sort of the beginning for me of saying, I need a safe space to not be strong all the time.
Ooh, say that again. A safe
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. I needed the safe space. I
Safe
needed the
space.
safe space. And that safe space for me was with other Black women who understood what it meant to not be strong.
Yeah. And we're going to come back to right at that moment, but I don't want this moment to go by. You rise into the occasion to help your mom, and then, with the health concerns. This was not your first time. This was not the first time of you coming to your family's aid, to their rescue. Can you say more about that?
Oh, yeah. The first time my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer was a very challenging time. And coincidentally, I was in school that time as well. I was getting my master's degree. And my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and it was devastating because there's a strong history of breast cancer in our family, with my maternal grandmother also having breast cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother's youngest sister also had previously had breast cancer. And now here was my mom. And I was an expectant mom at the time myself with my daughter, and I was in a master's program. Um, and just having to step up in that role. And that was really one of the more difficult times because my sisters were a lot younger at that time. That was 6 years. This is in 2006. So they just were in their own lives, younger people, and a lot of it fell on me again,
Mm-hmm.
making decisions about her care, helping her receive treatment, all of that, cooking, cleaning, and still maintaining my studies, maintaining my own home, and at that time, I honestly was just on autopilot. This is what needs to be done. Get it done. Stay focused and push through.
Right. So, what you are saying to me is that there's a pattern, there's a history of you stepping up. And so now it makes sense that when now your mother needed some additional care after the stroke, that they're like, oh, LaToya, go ahead and do it. You got this, girl, right? Because you've done it. It sounds like you did it well, but along the way, and I don't want to put any feelings in it, but I'm going to say you were drowning. How would you say it?
I was drowning. I absolutely was drowning. Drowning in the responsibility, but also drowning in the loneliness of it, right? Because when you're in the thick of it, you can't you feel like you can't talk about it. Talking about it, I was worried about being perceived as complaining or feeling resentful or angry, or I just was worried that other people would see me as selfish about how I felt about having all of this additional responsibility. So there was a sense of loneliness. I'm in
Mm-hmm.
this by myself and have to figure it out by myself. And I think the other piece of this too is when you look like you're doing it well, when you've been successful with the additional responsibility, you show up dependable, people say, "Oh, she can handle it. Let's trust her with a little bit more. Let's give her a little bit
Absolutely.
more."
Yes.
And so there wasn't a real discussion. There just was this expectation. And I rose to that because I had always done that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even before the her first breast cancer diagnosis, I had just always done that.
Right. So let's now go back, fast forward to the safe space. So you
Yes.
finally got a place to get that safe space. Now, as a therapist, how would I, can you conceptualize it for us? What does that look like in the world that we're in right now?
So it's a place where you get to be your full and complete self. You get to be authentic. There wasn't a fear of judgment. I didn't, once I let it out and how well I was received, I felt covered in love. I felt covered in understanding. And so that's what it felt like. And once I could feel that and I didn't feel judged, I didn't feel I just felt covered and loved and supported, and like I could be my whole self, and I could feel angry, and I could say that, and I could talk about feeling guilty, and I could talk about feeling resentful without worried about being judged as a bad daughter or a bad wife or a bad friend. And I think that that's what keeps us closed in. We're worried about being judged by other
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so so we heard your personal story. How does this now transfer and translate into what you do in the world?
So I call myself a reformed, strong Black woman. And what I mean by that is just continuing to embrace vulnerability and showing up as a full human being who experiences the gamut of emotions and empowering other Black women to be able to do that, whether it's creating those safe spaces in their relationships, and first admitting it to themselves that this is a need and that I get to be a complete human being. So, being able to work with women in my practice, and in other spaces, and just encouraging them to show up fully. There's this, holding back emotionally and taking care of other people, prioritizing that, and just teaching them about the value of learning to prioritize themselves,
Hmm.
and the value of vulnerability in expressing emotion and understanding emotion and letting go of this idea of independence and embracing community, with those around us.
Hmm. And are you able just to share maybe some tips that you could just give us right now as to how do we become more vulnerable? How do we do some of the things with the value that we may not have really realized that we have?
One of those things is learning to say no. And I know that this is such a big thing right now. So many people are talking about it, but it really is a big deal. Learning to say no and doing it without the guilt, right? Learning when you say no to others, it's a yes to yourself. And that can be seen as an act of self love, right? So when you say no to other people, you're saying yes to yourself. So that's one. Two is journaling. Journaling is a really good way to just be able to name your emotions, to be able to even admit to yourself that you're having these feelings and that it's okay for you to feel this way. So it allows that connection to your own emotional experience. And it gives clarity in real time to how you're experiencing a moment or a situation. And then lastly, create a sustainable and realistic whole self care plan.
Hmm.
We talk a lot about that, and I'm talking about a whole self care plan that takes into account your spiritual needs, your physical needs, your mental needs, the needs that you have for your environment, your space, that you're doing things that promote wellness in those areas. And too often we think of, self care as, the manicure, the day at the spa, and not that those things um, aren't important for self care, but more importantly, are you meditating? Are you in prayer? Are you, taking time alone for yourself, and really thinking about the wholeness of who you are and what you need to take care of yourself?
Oh, those are great tips. And I guess I want to ask you, do you have resources that will help us with the self-care part of it or the journaling piece?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. I just completed a new journal. I have a copy here to share with you. And this journal is called Nourishing the Strong Black Woman, a self care journal. And it is a 6 week experience where you are walked through all of the core concepts of being a strong Black woman, and there are journal prompts, there are exercises, there are specific tasks that you do to work through those concepts, and at the end, create a self care plan for yourself. So, this is an awesome resource, for you to use in your journey to deal with that.
Yeah. So I love that. I love that cover. It's beautiful. Are you able
Thank
to
you.
kind of open up the journal and maybe just kind of give us an
Yes.
example of some of the exercises that you will walk us through?
Oh yeah. So the very first journal prompt is all about who are the strong black women in your life? Where did you learn this from? What does it mean for you to be a strong black woman? And then one of the first exercises is in the first week is to actually identify three things that you're willing to give up in order to stop showing up as a strong black woman. So it walks you through everything. And you can do this at your own pace. It's nice because you can go back and review. The second section is on emotional regulation and just talking about family rules around emotional expression. What were you taught growing up about expressing emotions? So each chapter, each section has a journal prompt, and then the reflection in week two is what does it mean to you to be vulnerable? And how are you expressing that? What's the challenges in being vulnerable? So it really walks you through you can take your time, set your own pace with this. That's what I love about it. You can do it on your own. And it just really is a good resource.
I love that. If you can just share, how can the listeners get a hold of a copy of your journal?
You can go to my website at fmcounselingmichigan.com, and under the shop tab you'll be able to find there's a digital version of the book, and then there's this version of the book, and you can order those right there on the website.
Awesome. So amazing. It seems like a great program. Now, can you also share, do you have additional ways that you work with folks, whether as a client or as a therapist or as a coaching client?
Absolutely. So, beginning in October, I'm starting a 6 week group that will actually be walking through the 6 week journal. I'm really excited about that because it gives participants an opportunity to create community with other Black women who are experiencing this. And then you get access to me walking you through the activities. We get to take a real deep dive into this. So that'll be starting next month. So that's one way. The other is the webinar. I do have a webinar that it's called Silent No More. An empowering guide to owning and redefining the strong black woman narrative. And that is a really good way to take a deep dive in understanding the concepts, because a lot of times we hear ourselves say it, but we don't always know what it is to show up in our how it shows up in our everyday lives. And so that webinar is a great opportunity to experience those concepts and get to see how it feels and looks walking and talking in our daily lives. And you can purchase the webinar. I do the webinar once a month right now because it's so popular and people are really getting a lot out of it. So you can also purchase the webinar on the shop tab as well.
Awesome. So much goodness and multiple ways to work with you to get this, to get the information and or to get the information to become a reformed, strong
Yes,
black woman. Yes, because
absolutely.
that's like the S in our chest. We wear it proudly, but at the same time it's so heavy that it is frequently killing us. Okay,
Yes,
or preventing us from rising the way that we were made and put here to do.
absolutely.
So with that, I'm going to close. I'm going to ask you to close with what I'm going to call a Dr. LaToya ism. If is there some like a final thought that you would like to leave us with today?
I think I would say to really focus on letting go of the guilt that comes with choosing yourself.
Mm,
I think that that is so important. We feel guilty for choosing ourselves, for prioritizing what we need. And right about now, our foundation is cracking because we've embraced this for far too long.
mm.
And it's important for us to start to take better care of ourselves.
Amen and amen. I co-sign that and approve that message. So with that, Dr.
Yes.
LaToya, thank you for being on the Destiny Exposure Summit. Take care.
Thank you.
And there you have it. That was Dr. LaToya. It was so good. And if you are that strong black woman that needs to be reformed, go ahead and reach out to her. You can go the DIY approach and get the journal that was beautiful that will walk you through the 6 weeks. But if you are like me and you need that one-on-one support, you want to be in that group setting where you can create community, go ahead and reach out to her and get in that group. All right, because it's time for us to in order to be ourselves but not kill ourselves. We want to be helpful, but we don't want to burn ourselves up trying to help everybody else. So I am Dr. Marcia, and stay tuned for more from the Destiny Exposure Summit, where speakers tell their story, they touch their tribe, and they expand their territory.